Please remain seated. The show will begin in 3, 2...
Like a Hellcat.
Does anyone remember an old PC game from the early 1990s called Mr. Mix? It's mainly a typing game, similar to Mario Teaches Typing, where you have to type words into a box to make a chef, like Mr. Mix, who puts ingredients into a bowl. Unlike most typing games, however, this game is notorious for having an insane difficulty curve. The game has a quote, words per minute requirement for each level, being as low as 10 on level 1, and as high as 85 on the third. By level 5, the requirement reaches over 500, effectively making it impossible to proceed any further. One of the main things that people noticed about this game immediately was the background music. The music on the first level was an unsettling pattern of growls that got progressively louder as the level went on, often causing damage to early computer speakers that were not designed to handle extremely high volumes of sound. The second level had no music at all, and the third had what sounded like an extremely low quality recording of a hairdryer playing in the background. The remaining two levels had an extremely loud, high-pitched ringing throughout the level that caused severe eardrum damage to those who managed to get that far. Another rather disturbing aspect of the game was the design of Mr. Mix himself. He was a large, round-faced, overweight man with large beady eyes and red spots on his cheeks. Most children who played the game reported having vivid nightmares of Mr. Mix speaking to them in a quiet, raspy voice and threatening them to keep quiet about something. However, none of them could remember exactly what it was. One psychologist, who saw many of these children, reported being disturbed by the sheer amount of terror on their faces as they recounted the details of the nightmare. Many of the children broke down into tears in the process, begging for their parents to save them. However, no direct relationship to the game itself could be determined by these few cases, as not all children suffered the same adverse effects. For obvious reasons, this game did not sell very well. It remained in relative obscurity until a few years ago, when PC hackers got a hold of a ROM of the game and started digging through it. Using memory hacking software, they managed to crack the game's code and bypass the impossible 5th level. What they found, however, was extremely disturbing and caused many of them to quit the expedition altogether. According to the reports these hackers left behind, the game behaves very strangely if the 5th level is bypassed. The game crashes violently and closes, writing a bunch of files to the user's System32 directory to the point that the RAM was almost completely filled. These files are reportedly pictures of people with horribly deformed faces appearing to scream in pain and agony, with their eyes appearing to be bleeding from their tear ducts, and their outer layer of skin torn clean off in multiple places. If the user attempts to delete these files, the computer will violently crash and blue screen, causing permanent, irreparable damage to the user's hard drive. The hackers found that this was caused by a lone byte in the game's ROM that triggered when the 5th level was completed. After removing this byte, they were able to proceed to the 6th and final level. Unfortunately, all the original hackers declined to discuss what they saw in the final level. All of them became extremely paranoid and reclusive, refusing to talk about anything related to the game, and showing astonishingly extreme symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Most of them ceased to be able to form coherent sentences within a week, and within a month, all of them went missing. All remaining copies of the game were destroyed. To this day, no one knows what was in that game that caused them so much psychological damage. Maybe it's better that way. 2 years after this incident, a man was arrested after trying to kidnap an 8-year-old girl from a grocery store. Through DNA and fingerprint analysis, the man was identified as one of the original hackers who viewed the final level of the game. He was wearing a chef's hat and had a look of unspeakable malice and insanity on his face. When interrogated, the man would only say one thing: "I'm Mr. Mix." I had recently spawned a new world in single-player Minecraft. Everything was normal at first as I began chopping down trees and crafting a workbench. I noticed something move amongst the dense fog. I have a very slow computer, so I have to play with a tiny render distance. I thought it was a cow, so I pursued it, hoping to grab some hides for armor. It wasn't a cow, though. Looking back at me was another character with the default skin, but his eyes were empty. I saw no name pop up, and I double-checked to make sure I wasn't in multiplayer mode. He didn't stay long. He looked at me and quickly ran into the fog. I pursued out of curiosity, but he was gone. I continued on with the game, not sure what to think. As I expanded the world, I saw things that seemed out of place for the random map generator to make. 2x2 tunnels in the rocks, small perfect pyramids made of sand in the ocean, and a grove of trees with all their leaves cut off. I would constantly think I saw the other player in the deep fog, but I never got a better look at him. I tried increasing my render distance to far whenever I thought I saw him, but to no avail. I saved the map and went on to the forums to see if anyone else had found the pseudo-player. There were none. I created my own topic telling of the man and asking if anyone had a similar experience. The post was deleted within 5 minutes. I tried again and the topic was deleted even faster. I received a PM from username Herobrine containing one word: stop. When I went to look at Herobrine's profile, the page 404'd. I received an email from another forum user. He claimed the mods can read the forum user messages, so we were safer using email. The emailer claimed that he had seen the mystery player too, and had a small directory of other users who had seen him as well. Their worlds were littered with obviously man-made features as well, and described their mystery player to have no pupils. About a month passed until I heard from my informant again. Some of the people who had encountered the mystery man had looked into the name Herobrine and found that name to be frequently used by a Swedish gamer. After some further information gathering, it was revealed to be the brother of Notch, the game's developer. I personally emailed Notch and asked him if he had a brother. It took him a while, but he emailed me back a very short message. I did, but he is no longer with us. I haven't seen the mystery man since our first encounter, and I haven't noticed any changes to the other world other than my own. I was able to press print screen when I first saw him. Here's the only evidence I have of his existence. I always liked Super Mario 64 when I was a kid. I remember playing it at my aunt's house all the time. Well, one day a pop-up appeared out of nowhere as I was watching gameplay footage on YouTube. I was a little startled and was about to close the window until I realized that it was a website showing a mint condition copy of Super Mario 64 for sale. There was a picture and everything. I usually don't trust these things, but the feeling of nostalgia overpowered me, and I wanted to buy it. The whole business was peculiar, seeing as how the owner of the game wanted the buyer to send an envelope containing $10 and address on the site. instead of using something like PayPal. What made things even more strange was that when I tried to gain access to the website, I wrote down the URL after encountering problems with the game, yet the page was nowhere to be found. A few days after the $10 was mailed, I got a package containing the new copy of the game. The first thing I noticed when I opened the small box was the quote official sticker with Mario flying in the air was apparently peeled off or something. In its place was a piece of duct tape with quote Mario crudely written on it in permanent marker. I felt a little ripped off, but as long as the game worked, I didn't care. I got out my Nintendo 64 and put the cartridge in. The screen turned on with the familiar Mario face that you could stretch and twist aimlessly. I remember laughing all the time at the result as a kid and decided to mess around for old time's sake. I moved the cursor over to Mario's ear and pulled it to elven proportions. I was going to do the same to the other ear when the TV suddenly produced loud static. Mario's whole head started deforming and twisting in ways that I didn't even know were possible for the model. Random sound effects from the game started playing along with the static. As all this was occurring, I could hear a faint voice whispering in Japanese. The voice was stammering and whispering. I immediately shut off the game and tried again. I didn't bother with the Mario head this time, just selected a new file and started playing. When I selected the file, the game skipped the opening monologue by Peach and the courtyard outside. Mario was just placed right inside the castle. Creepier still, Bowser didn't even say anything either. I tried to ignore it and played anyway. However, I also noticed that there was no music. Just dead silence. There weren't even any toads around to talk to. The only door I could enter was the Bob-Ob battlefield. The other doors wouldn't even respond to my button commands. The portrait to the Bob-Ob battlefield wasn't the usual picture. It was just a stark, white canvas. I was still trying to convince myself that these were just minor glitches, and that they all wouldn't affect the gameplay at all. Once I entered the portrait, the image suddenly went from a blank canvas to the lethal lava land painting. You know that slightly unsettling image of the flame within the evil smile? Yeah, that's when I started getting really suspicious. The mission select menu came up, and yet another weird detail was present. Instead of, quote, Big Bob Ob on the summit, the mission was called, quote, Turn Back. I have no idea what drove me to press A, but I did. The level seemed normal. Everything was how I remembered it. I thought I could finally enjoy my favorite childhood game. But then I saw him. Luigi. I was absolutely shocked. He was never in this game. His model wasn't even a Mario palette swap. He looked like a completely original model. Luigi just stood there until I tried to approach him. He started running at unexpected speeds. I followed him suit and went through the level. Strange things happened as I pursued him. Each time I picked up a coin, the enemies and music would get slower, and the scenery would look darker in color and more morbid. It gradually got worse until I collected a fifth coin. Then the music just stopped. The enemies lay down on the ground like they were dead. I was seriously freaked out, but I kept chasing Luigi. I went up the hill. No cannonballs rolled down trying to knock me over. I wasn't really surprised at this point. Luigi was always just out of my sight as I ran. Once I reached the summit, I saw yet another object out of place. A small cottage was all that was seen on the top of the hill. Luigi was nowhere to be found. The cottage was certainly odd looking for a Mario game. It was plain, old, and broken down. Regardless of my fears at that moment, I had Mario enter the cottage. As soon as the door closed, a disturbing picture of a hanged Luigi immediately popped up along with a very frightening scare chord. It sounded like a violent screech, accompanied by loud piano banging. Mario fell to his knees and sobbed for roughly 5 minutes. Then the screen irised out. I returned to the castle. Mario just slumped out of the painting. The image switched from the lethal lava land portrait to the image of Luigi hanging himself. The room was different this time. It was now a small hallway. Toads with blank expressions and white ropes lined the sides of the hallway. There was another painting at the opposite end that just completely and utterly scared me. It was a picture of my family. It wasn't even a photo from the Super Mario 64 at the time that it was released. It was a very, very recent photo. I remembered posing for it last weekend. I reached for the on and off switch on the N64. There was no way I was going to play this anymore. However, when I flipped the switch, the game was still on. I flipped it back and forth, but to no avail. I tried unplugging the whole system, but it never left the screen. I was even still able to control Mario. I couldn't just leave it on forever, so I kept playing. I went to the photo of my family and jumped in. Only one mission was available, of course. This one was called, quote, Run, Don't Walk. I selected the mission. Let's go. The level started in a flooded hallway with platforms floating on the water. Mario landed on one of these, and the camera turned to show what was behind. A silent black void was slowly approaching Mario. It didn't look like anything. It didn't even look like finished graphics. Just a giant blocky black blob. I had started jumping from platform to platform. With no goal in sight, I kept running, the darkness slowly but surely gaining speed. This kept on going for what felt like hours. I was really doubting there would ever be an end. Mario was just going in circles. Finally, the black blob/void thing caught up with Mario and enveloped him in darkness. He didn't scream or resist at all. It just consumed him. Mario fell out of the painting and back into the castle. I lost one of my 3 lives. The room was different now. Some of the toads were gone, and the painting looked different. My family and I were in the same positions, but our bodies were partially decomposed. It looked too real to be photoshopped. It looked more like someone just took our dead bodies and posed them. Regardless, I jumped into the painting again. Mario was in a small room. There was still only one mission available. It was called I'm Right Here, spelled just like that. I selected the mission, prepared for the worst. Mario landed in a small dark room, there being no visible way out. The room was empty except for a piano in the corner. I knew what that meant. I was stuck in there with a mad piano. I approached it, and it started chasing me as always. There was no way to damage it, so I had no choice but to let Mario take damage. When he lost all of his health, the usual death animation didn't happen. Mario just got mauled by the piano. He fell as his blood and guts spilled on the floor, and the camera panned to a top-down view of his corpse. A distorted version of the merry-go-round music from Big Boo's Haunt played as the screen slowly transitioned from the in-game shot to a photorealistic sketch of Mario's dead body in the same view as the shot. It was very unsettling. I was crying softly as I gazed upon the image. I lost another life. The photo of my family was shown again. We were even more rotten than before. The view zoomed into the painting, like I was warping again. I was greeted with a shot of Peach's castle from the outside. The castle was crumbling in ruin. The fields were on fire. The sky was pitch black. Bowser's laugh played on a loop in the background. His children mockingly chanted, "You couldn't save her." This went on for a long time until a close-up of Peach's face, accompanied by an extremely loud screech, interrupted the loop without notice. Peach's mouth was wide open as if she was screaming, and her eyes were empty. Black holes. Suddenly, I was back in the hallway as Mario was once again ejected out of the painting. Now all of the toads were gone, and me and my family looked positively repulsive. Maggots were wriggling around in holes in our flesh. Guts were spilling out of our bodies. My dad's eyeball was hanging loose from its socket. It was too much to bear, but something still urged me to trudge on. I jumped into the painting with only one life remaining. This time there was no name for the mission, just a blank space where the title would be. I selected the mission, and Mario landed on a very small island in the middle of the ocean. There was a solitary sign. It only read, "Dive." I did just as it said and entered the water. The ocean was dark and empty. There were no fish. I wasn't even able to see anything in the water besides Mario. I swam downwards. I kept going for quite some time, yet Mario never ran out of breath. I counted roughly 10 minutes of swimming until I decided to go back up. Just as I turned Mario around, it came. A huge, and I mean huge, eel came out of nowhere and swallowed Mario whole. I was dumbfounded. It went by so fast I wasn't even sure what I saw. The game over screen didn't show up. All that happened was a fade out. The photo of my family and I was shown again. We were plain skeletons now. Once again, it looked very real. I couldn't even move the camera at all. It just stayed focused on the picture. I shut off the game and turned it on again. I chose my file, but it just went to the skeleton photo of my family. I tried this about 3 more times before giving up. I desperately wanted to stop, but some force kept me from walking away. I decided to select the only other saved file. The camera once again focused on the skeleton picture, but this time they were in a different position, as if they were a different family.